I never expected that my quiet life near the lake would turn into a legal war that would shake an entire neighborhood, expose a decade of corruption, and end with a mansion. Yes, a whole mansion, being handed over me by a court that didn't know whether to laugh or apologize. But life has a strange way of forcing justice through the cracks, especially when people build their kingdoms on someone else's land. My name's Daniel Harper. I'm 58 years old, retired from a long career repairing heavy machinery, and I bought my lakeside property for the same reason most folks my age chase rural living: peace. Peace in the sound of water. Peace in mornings that don't begin with traffic. Peace that no one bothers you unless they're your neighbor asking to borrow a hammer. At least that's how it used to be. My land sits just outside an HOA border, just outside. I made sure of it when I bought it 17 years ago. I wasn't about to let a committee of self-appointed rule lovers tell me what color my mailbox had to be. The realtor practically sang when she told me, "The HOA ends right there. Your place is free and clear." So I settled in. I fixed up the old cabin, cleared the brush, repaired the boat dock, and spent my mornings drinking coffee while deer grazed not 15 feet away. It was heaven. Then the HOA grew. They expanded, or at least pretended they did. Little by little they crept up the road, buying foreclosed houses, redrawing maps, acting like they were the government of a tiny country no one asked for. And the person leading the charge was a man named Leonard Briggs, the HOA president. Tall, square-shouldered, walked like he owned the land he walked on. You know the type. Every neighborhood's got one. He'd been a real estate agent in the 90s, and he carried the swagger of a man who still believed he could talk anyone into anything. I didn't think much of him at first. He never bothered me, and I stayed out of HOA matters entirely. But Briggs had bigger dreams. Dreams that, unfortunately for him, involved my land. It started the day he came strolling down my gravel driveway like he'd been invited to Sunday lunch. I was repairing my kayak. He didn't wave, didn't clear his throat, just appeared behind me and barked. You know you're supposed to get approval from the HOA for shoreline alterations, right? I looked at him like he'd told me the sky was plaid. "Sir," I said, "this land is an HOA. Never has been." He crossed his arms, the smug smile already creeping across his lips. "It is now," he replied. I set down my tools. "No, it's not. We redrew boundaries last fall. You can't redraw them onto private property." "Oh, it's not private." That was the first sign that something was very wrong. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and motioned toward the cabin. "I've got the deed inside. You're welcome to look at it." "I don't need to see fake paperwork," he scoffed. "Fake paperwork?" I was stunned speechless. "I'll give you a week," he continued. "After that, you'll need to bring your structures up to HOA code standards and file an application for waterfront use." And like that, he turned and walked away. I thought he was bluffing. People bluff. HOA presidents bluff all the time. But that wasn't a bluff. That man had plans. 3 weeks later, I saw construction crews across the lake. Big crews, excavators, surveyors, concrete mixers. They were clearing trees at a frantic pace. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't my land, or so I thought. But the machinery kept edging closer. Every day they nibbled into the woods, pushing further and further past what I'd always believed was a property line. I took my ATV and rode out to check. When I saw where the stakes were going, I felt my stomach drop so fast, I nearly got sick. The stakes were on my land, 5 acres of it. I called the county office. They told me they had received filings for Briggs Shores Expansion, a luxury lakefront development project. They said the HOA had provided documentation showing that the land was part of the association's original grant. Grant? I asked, "What grant? This land has been owned privately for decades." "Well," the clerk replied hesitantly, "the documents they submitted indicate otherwise." I drove to the clerk's office. I stood at the counter while a young man pulled the documents the HOA submitted, and what I saw, it was the fakest paperwork I'd ever set eyes on. Wrong fonts, wrong formatting, signatures that didn't match any county official. The notary seal was from a woman who died in 2009. You'd think they'd at least Google the names. When I pointed that out, The clerk paled. Sir, if these are fraudulent, that's a crime. Yeah, I replied, and it's happening on my land right now. The county froze the project pending review. Briggs wasn't happy. He marched down my cabin again, this time with 2 other HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. You've made a mistake, Briggs growled. A big one. All I did, I said calmly, was protect what's mine. What's yours? He actually laughed. You think this cabin counts as ownership? That decrepit shack? This land is worth millions. We're developing a community that will raise values for everyone. For everyone but me, I said. You could sell, he suggested, shrugging. I'll make you an offer today. $200,000 for the land. I nearly choked. $200,000? I'd been offered triple that by a timber company years ago. The lakefront alone was worth a fortune. You can leave now, I said. He sneered. You're making enemies you can't afford to make. The men with him looked down at their shoes. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I hired a lawyer, an old friend from my working years. His name was Wesley, smart as a whip, stubborn as an oak stump. I handed him my deed, survey maps, receipts, everything. He examined it and said one sentence that changed the course of the entire mess. Daniel, he said, these documents aren't just valid. They predate the HOA entirely. That meant the HOA had no claim. None. Zero. Not 1 inch. Wesley filed an injunction. The county halted all work. The HOA panicked and scrambled to produce more paperwork. Each new document they submitted was sloppier than the last. One even had a signature from a judge who retired years before the date on the form. Then came the property survey. The county ordered a full survey of all the land involved. 2 men came out, set their equipment, walked the boundaries, and when they were done, they called me over. Mr. Harper. One said, I think you're going to want to sit down. They pointed at the map. The HOA president's mansion, the big one he was building for himself on the prime lakefront, was sitting dead center on my land. All 6,200 square feet of it. The deck, the stone patio, the private dock, the boat lift, the outdoor kitchen, the guest house, everything, every nail, every screw, every fancy window imported from Italy, all of it was on my side of the line. I laughed. I couldn't help it. After months of stressing, pacing, worrying, not sleeping, the relief hit me like a tidal wave. But the battle wasn't over. Briggs doubled down. He accused the surveyors of tampering. He accused me of bribing the county. He even claimed that the land was gifted to the HOA by a previous owner, a claim disproven in 5 minutes when we produced a woman's will and estate documents. Still, the man fought tooth and nail. He poured HOA money, homeowners' money, into legal fees. He held emergency meetings telling residents I was trying to steal community property. Steal my own land. Court hearings began. Depositions. Testimonies. At one point, Briggs demanded I be charged with fraud. The judge gave him a look I'll never forget, like he was staring at a child throwing a tantrum in church. Then came the final hearing. Briggs strutted into the courtroom like he was about to win an Oscar. His lawyer carried a binder, so thick it needed a handle. My lawyer carried one folder, thin enough to be mistaken for takeout menus. The judge reviewed everything, quietly, calmly, and after 2 hours he asked both sides to stand. Based on the deeds, the surveys, the chain of title, and the overwhelming evidence, he said, this land belongs entirely to Mr. Harper. Briggs stiffened. And furthermore, the judge continued, all developments built on Mr. Harper's land, including the residence constructed by Mr. Briggs, are legally the property of Mr. Harper. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. The judge wasn't done. The HOA is ordered to pay fines for fraudulent filings, unauthorized development, and encroachment. Mr. Harper is entitled to full ownership of all structures on his land. Court is adjourned. Briggs collapsed into his chair. I walked out owning a mansion I never asked for. Residents cornered me outside the court building. Some hugged me, some apologized. Some were angry, but not at me, They were furious at Briggs for wasting their money, lying to them, dragging them into a mess that could have been avoided if he had just left me alone. What I didn't expect was what happened next. I met with the community. I told them I didn't blame them. I told them everyone gets misled sometimes. We talked for hours. People cried. People admitted they'd been afraid to stand up to Briggs for years. Then something shifted. The HOA board held an emergency vote. Briggs was removed as president that night. Not gently, not politely. His reign was over. As for the mansion, I didn't want it. Not really. It was too big, too fancy, too dramatic for a man who liked simple cabins and fishing poles. But the land mattered. So I made a choice that surprised everyone, including myself. I donated the mansion to the county to serve as a retreat center for veterans. I kept the land, of course, but the structure became something meaningful, something that would help people instead of feeding a man's ego. When the first group of veterans arrived months later, one of them shook my hand and said, "I don't know what happened here, but thank you." And that's when I realized something important. Something I didn't expect this mess to teach me. People build big houses and big titles and big reputations, but they build them on lies, on arrogance, on other people's backs. Eventually, the foundation cracks. Eventually, the truth shows. And when that happens, everything they built falls into the hands of someone who actually values integrity. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes it even hands you a mansion. But more importantly, sometimes life proves that standing up for what's right, no matter how exhausting, no matter how unfair the fight seems, is worth it. Because peace isn't something you buy. It's something you protect. And that's what I did. I protected my peace. And in the end, the whole lake found theirs too.